Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Straight Talking with Trimble Ag, Implement Steering. Let's take control of what's behind. I hope everyone is keeping well, and thank you for everyone taking the time to attend in these unprecedented times we find ourselves in. So tonight, what we will talk about is implement steering and the different options that are available to you. And with these different options, we have the pleasure of having two implement steering customers with us tonight. So James Peck from PX Farms and Robert Hodgkins from Carpoy, who will both share their experiences of implement steering with us. Also tonight, we have Hervé Defranc, who is the General Manager of LaForge. So LaForge are now a Trimble Select partner, which I will explain what this means a little bit shortly. And Hervé will take us through the LaForge product portfolio and how the Trimble and LaForge products complement each other. As always, we want to encourage questions. Questions can be submitted through the questions tab on your GoToWebinar pop-out, as here, so as a red circle. So if you just pop your questions in there, and then we'll get through as many as we can at the end of the presentation, and any that we don't, we'll follow up with an email with an answer to that question. So on the call tonight, just a bit about myself firstly. My name's Lee Clark. I've been working in the ag industry for 30 years plus now. I makes me feel old. But I started on a local farm, and then whilst at school, then leaving school, I did an ag engineering course at Receive College. And then upon leaving there, I did a variety of farming jobs as self-employed until I joined a Trimble reseller in 2007. And then the past 3 years, I've been working for Trimble, looking after the UK and Ireland. So also on the call from Trimble team, we have Chris Hartley, who's a field applications engineer for Scandinavia and Sub-Sahara Africa. And also we have on the call Sabrina and Jennifer, who are from the marketing department, who have made all this possible, this webinar. So a big thank you to them. They put a lot of effort in for tonight. So as I said before, also on the call we have Hervé, and we've got Robert, who's mixed farm. So yeah, as you can see there out in the field, so mixed farm in Hertfordshire, and we got James Alval farming in Cambridgeshire. So we'll catch up with them a little bit later on. So also tonight we have on the call, we have representatives from our dealer network, as we do on every webinar. So from Soil Essentials, we've got Rod Armour, Mantera, we've got Andrew Manifield down in Yorkshire. Vantage England and Wales, we've got Mark Griffiths. From Sim Agri, we have Andy Bell, and Vantage Ireland, we have Terry Keogh. So again, these will be available after the presentation to answer the questions. We'll open up to these guys so they can share with them their knowledge and experience with you. So yeah, again, as many questions as you want. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and we'll try and endeavour to get through as many as we possibly can. So I touched a little bit on Trimble Select at the beginning, just a couple of slides ago, and I mentioned that LaForge are a Trimble Select partner. So what does this mean for you guys, the customer? Well, this means not only can you purchase Trimble products through our Trimble distribution network, but now you have access to other complementary products as well. You can access products from LaForge, which we will learn a little bit more later on. Same crop, which we all know for the weather stations, so we have access to them through the Trimble reseller network. Magro, which are used on sprayers, and then we have SenseFly as well, which are the fixed-wing drones. So again, it just opens up these complementary businesses to the Trimble network. And if you want any more information on these products, do contact your local dealer, your local Trimble dealer. He'll be more than happy to give you some more information and explain that a little bit further. So that's Trimble Select in a nutshell. So let's get on to why we're all here, and let's discuss implement steering. So implement steering. As Trimble, we offer two types of implement steering. One is what we call passive implement steering. This is what we call True Guide, and the other is active implement steering. So what we call True Tracker. So with implement steering from Trimble, the vehicle pulling the implement must have an auto steer system on the tractor. Not an assisted steering system, so in an easy steer or an easy pilot, that can't work. It's got to be an auto steer or an autopilot motor drive, which is the electric steering motor with an auto steer controller. Also, implement steering will only work with our flagship display, which is a TMX 2050. So making sure we've got them on the tractor before we start. So what's the difference between the two implement steering systems, I hear you all asking? So let's take a look at what the difference is. So we'll start with passive implement steering, True Guide. So passive implement steering is, the basics of it is we steer the tractor off the line to keep the implement on the line, or the antenna on the implement. So using an auto steer or an autopilot motor drive, as I discussed before, we add an additional antenna to the implement, and then using the two antennas, the system knows where the implement is, so therefore knows how far the tractor is away from the line, it knows how far the implement is away from the line, and it knows where the line is. So then it can make the movement on the tractor to keep the implement where it should be. Can we not just take the antenna from the tractor and put it on the implement? I hear you all asking. It's a question we get asked a lot, and the answer is no, we can't. Main reason being is if you take the antenna off the tractor, you put it on the implement, the steering, the tractor, we know no idea where the tractor is, and once this tractor moves off the line to try and keep the antenna that's you've taken off the tractor on the implement on the line, it's made such a massive movement to make an impact, it's way out offline. So you end up with this swerving effect down the field. So it just doesn't work at all. So it's a good solution. It's a main solution. It's mainly used on trailed implements, going to be honest, for that articulated, for drill, cultivators, etc. So it's a very popular implement steering solution. It's not used in CTF. So for controlled traffic, and the only obvious reason is we're moving the tractor off the trafficking lane so that the implement stays on the trafficking lane. So we're moving the tractor out. We're taking it, obviously, from controlled traffic point is useless. So it's not for CTF, but it is a very popular and sometimes overlooked. And it's surprising with True Guide how much an implement will move. And you say, oh, I've got flat fields or etc. It's not that bad. Even on the flat, even in Cambridgeshire fens, and I've seen them, they move 10, 15 centimeters, especially drills who have a disc in place. They do move around a fair bit. So what's required for a steering system? A True Guide, a passive implement steering system. So this is Robert Hodgkin's setup. As we can see here, on the left-hand side, we have our TMX 2050 display. We have a navigation controller to control the auto steer. Whether it's an auto guide ready tractor, we just need the nav controller. If it's non-auto guide ready tractor, we can then either we could plumb it up with a hydraulic valve, or we can use the electric steering motor. So instead of controlling the steering through the hydraulics of the machine, we can control the steering through the electric motor with the navigation controller. And then we have our antenna on the right on the top of the tractor, and then all we add on the back is the antenna on the machine. So we add that machine antenna. We also add a second GPS receiver to our 2050 display, and then we have our True Guide done. So it's a very simple installation from that point, but the system, the measurements are critical. And when setting up this system, when doing it from over winter, etc., in all fairness, with any steering system, measurements are critical, and it's not something we should guess. This is precision farming. We should use a tape measure. So we need to know where the antenna is in relation to the fixed axle of the tractor. We need to know where the hitch of the tractor is in compared to the fixed axle. We need to know where the 3-point linkage is. So we need to know where that antenna is in relation to everything. So all these measurements are very critical to how the system performs in the field, as well as calibration. But measurements with any steering system, whether it's an implement steering system or tractor steering system, or you're just setting an implement without implement steering, measurements are always critical. So the benefits, what are the benefits of True Guide? So why should we go down this route? So the benefit of the system is of reduced operator fatigue. I think it's hugely important now. We touched on it on the last webinar we did last year about the weather windows getting ever shorter, and then the demand on the staff to work longer hours when that window of opportunity arises. And we're looking out the window now. Yes, it's nice and frosty. The sun's been shining today, but not 2 weeks ago, my local town here was underwater pretty much for a week. So again, these windows of opportunity, they are getting less and less. So the demand on staff is is greater, so to work longer hours. So we do reduce operator fatigue. Yes, we do with steering systems, but even more so with implement steering. It reduces overlaps and skips for the obvious reason. We're steering the implement. We're making sure the implement is exactly where it is. We unify. I think it unifies machinery wear. Now, what do I mean by this? If your machine is running in pre-worked down the edges, so you do one pass, you turn around, come back. But if you're overlapping 10 centimeters or so, 10, 15 centimeters, them edges aren't going to wear the same as the center. For obvious reasons, you're running through softer soil. So when it comes to servicing and we replace the points or the coulters, whatever we're replacing, we tend to replace a lot. So if it's unifying, obviously it makes it a lot more worthwhile. And also we increase the accuracy of the product placement by keeping the drill exactly where we want it to be or whatever we're towing behind us. And with this last point, it's been quite important to Robert from Carpoy, who's used True Guide last autumn, as he's now following his drill with the Garford mechanical hoe at 12.5 centimeter spacings. The previous season, so 2019 seasons, he didn't use the True Guide. This season he has, and we've got a short video here of Robert's drill in action. And after this, we caught up with Robert early in the week whilst he was sheep fencing. That's his electric fencing. He spends his life this time of year putting up sheep fencing. So with Robert, we'll share his experience after his first season with implement guidance. So what I'll do now, I'll just play the show screen True Guide. So hopefully we can go to Robert.
My name is Rob Hodgkins. I farm in partnership with my wife Jo. Our farm name is Kapoi, which is a Maori word for meaning food over water. We chose that because we bought a whole load of sheep genetics across from New Zealand, and I thought it was a really smart ass kind of thing to do. And over time, it's just kind of evolved to a point where no one can pronounce it, no one can spell it, and it's sort of I wish I'd never done it. I wish I just Rob Hodgkins Inc. or something, but it's too late to change now. We farm around 2,500 New Zealand Romneys on about 1,000 acres of grass, and we also farm about 1,600 to 1,700 acres of arable comprising of grass seed and basic cereals. No sugar beet and no sort of fancy potatoes or anything like that. Just a straight cereal and pulses farm. We got involved with Trimble a couple of years ago. I'll start right at the beginning. We were lucky enough to be invited to be an Agri-Epi Centre of Excellence farm. They were quite keen to have a mixed farm going, and they sort of liked what we were doing in terms of regenerative agriculture. Although, you know, I know it's a bit of a well-worn phrase, but you know, using sheep in breaks, using the sheep as a tool to try and reduce blackgrass. Yeah, just basically trying to return a bit of soil health and nutrition to the environment. So we sort of approached them with an idea. We wanted to do inter-row hoeing as well. We live in we're on the southeast coast of England, sort of near Stevenage, Hatfield kind of way, and we do live in a fairly blackgrass infested area, which comes with its own challenges. Atlantis and other kind of chemicals are largely now ineffective. So we wanted to try and do a more robust system of weed control via inter-row hoeing. We approached Agri-Epi and they were kind enough to sort of work with Garford to give us an inter-row hoe. The interesting thing about this inter-row hoe is it's set up for 125 mil spacings, not the usual 250, because we're using a Valdestad Rapid. Our first season was a couple of years ago when we just tried it on a basic EGNOS system and tried to go into row home with their camera. And what we found was what worked really, really well in the laboratory was an absolute disaster in the field. So we sort of regrouped a little bit. I basically went and begged and borrowed to Lee to try and get him to give us some stuff to help. So Lee was brilliant, got us involved. Lee's now got us on a steering system for the drill, so that we've got a receiver now on the drill. So there's a receiver on the tractor and a receiver on the drill, and I'm sure they've got fancy videos already, but the as the drill wanders, the tractor corrects to the drill position, not just the tractor, and it's made a hell of a difference. You look at things this year and they are absolutely dead straight. I mean, one of our other problems, if you like, is again with our emphasis on soil health and nutrition, we do tend to try and run quite light tractors. So on the 6 meter Valdister, we've only got 200 horsepower pulling it, which everyone keeps telling us it can't be done, but we still manage. But what it does mean is it can sort of start to struggle a little bit. And again, with True Guide, it was just awesome. And I think Lee's got some pictures from our drone as it's sort of going like that, and the drill lines are completely dead straight. So yeah, that's been our journey thus far, in a nutshell.
Excellent. As I say, we caught up with Robert a little bit earlier on, and as I say, Robert has been using True Guide this year. And I've been a bit ride around the farm this to the back end of last year, and you cannot see the joins in the drilling. It's still, I've been doing this for 14 years now, and it still astounds me to how good it is. And Robert, he's like, yeah, it is awesome to see. And it's hopefully, again, with the Garford, so the Garford hoe will obviously make a big difference. We've got isobus section control on that as well. So again, if it ever dries up enough, hopefully we'll see that in action as well. But again, Rob, thank you very much for your time earlier in the week. We know you're always busy putting some sheet fencing up somewhere, trying to get them back one side of the fence to the other. Again, Rob will be available later on for some Q&A, but again, put your questions in on the questions tab for Robert if you've got any questions about his operation and how he's working that. And he does use the steering system to put electric fencing out as well to make sure they're nice square hectare blocks. He did tell me that.
Yeah, but that is actually true. I do. And yeah, if your steering system can make a shepherd like me through dead straight lines, it can work for anyone. It really can.
Excellent. So great, thanks, Rob. So as I say, that's passive implement guidance. Again, if you need any information, do get in touch with your Trimble dealer. I'll be more than happy to even give you, if you can try and arrange a demo of it or something. We're more than happy to try and help. So well, that's passive implement steering. So we'll now move on to True Tracker, so active implement steering. So active implement steering has been around, I think it's about 2005 from Trimble. So it's been doing it a very long time. I started with the old 252s originally. So it's been around a long time, and it's been utilised now in great anger, really, because we're seeing a massive uptake in this system. So active implement steering, what is True Tracker? So True Tracker is an active steering system. So this works by independently controlling the steering of the tractor and the implement. So they work independently. This does not work like some systems where they follow the leader. So what I mean by this is they don't follow the path of the first antenna on the tractor. So the Trimble ensures that both antennas are following the guidance path set out by the display, and the performance of each independent system can be monitored in the cab. This gives farming businesses, I think, ultimate accuracy. So, and we see these systems used a lot in the potato industry, where, especially now, planters are getting a lot larger, where there's 3 rows, 4 rows, and where the de-stoners are still working in single beds, and we need to try and get this row uniformity. To get that is essential to give consistent soil coverage on the seed, whether it's potatoes, or veg, or carrots, or whatever we're doing. It's quite critical now for increased yield and less greens in potatoes, as we see. That is the main thing. So we also see True Tracker on large drills. So we're seeing now 12-meter drills out in the field that have a steering axle, and again, we've got to control them. So we can, if your drill has a steering axle already that's working off the drawbar, we can tee into that, so we can physically steer the axle of the drill to maintain it on the line. As I say, this is all working independently on the steering axle of the machine, but also on smaller precision drills. So 3-point linkage through side shift system. This is where LaForge specialise a little bit, to be fair. And we also see side shift being used on ridges, 3-bed ridges, And this is, as I say, is the ultimate accuracy. So it's something that we need to, I think, embrace. People, you guys are embracing it, and it is. But the thing is with True Tracker and the ultimate accuracy is try not to skip applications. So we'll use potatoes as an example. If you ridge up with RTK with a side shift system, but then you destone without anything, and you just, well, the tracks are laid, so we destone without anything. And then you bring your planter in with the steering system, so you've got a 3-bed planter, and it's not following the destoner ridges. It's because you miss that. You pick up soil, you drop it again, it's going to move. And what we need to do is pick it up and drop it in the right place. So again, we're seeing an increase in demand for this on destoners especially. So yeah, it's again a very good steering system. It's ideal for controlled traffic, because obviously we keep the tractor on the trafficking lane. We also keep the machine on the trafficking lane. And as I say, these both work independently. So as I say, it is good. So what do we need? So what do we need on our machine to make this work? So on the left here, we have our antenna, navigation controller, hydraulic valve. Now we fit that onto the machine on the back, so the implement. So it's got its own navigation controller, it has its own antenna, and it's got its own hydraulic valve where we control the steering. On the right-hand side, we have another navigation controller, our TMX 2050, and an antenna on the tractor. So what we're essentially doing is we've got 2 steering systems with 1 display. So again, you can see the difference between True Tracker, True Guide. Again, it's a nav controller. It's another steering system that we physically operate. So there's for the parts. The system calibrations of this are critical, and people who have got this system already will be going through their winter checks. But the calibrations, again, no guesswork. We've got to have it absolutely bang on. But this, I think, with this, I would get professionals in to do it. We have a plethora of skilled professionals up and down the country among our dealers who are trained and qualified to do this. And on new installs, the calibration will be done. So if you're having some installs done this year, I guess that'll be done by the dealer. But what I would advise is, if you've already got a True Tracker system or a steering system for that matter, is that every year before the season starts, you employ the services of your local Trimble dealer to come and check and recalibrate your system, clean up the data on your display. The technology on our machinery is often overlooked when preparing machinery for work, and it's often the most critical part. So we get it out, we get it in the workshop, we get our potato planters, we get everything in, we check it over, we oil everything, we get all grease, everything's all up, and we don't turn the GPS on until we get in the field and we've got a hopper full of potatoes and we're ready to go, and nothing's happening, or it's not going down the right line, or it's offline, etc. So it's really important that you take that time to service it as before you need it in the field. So again, what can we use it for? As I said, drilling before. Inter-row work, very important, and I've discussed this with Robert with his inter-row hoe and inter-row spraying. So we can control it with side shift on that. Again, very popular, becoming very popular side shift, where essentially with a side shift system you can pick up anything with a 3-point linkage and have implement steering, whether it be a drill, whether it be a hoe, whether it be a sprayer, etc. We can control it. So it's quite common. Planting, drilling, as we said before, and it is common with CTF. So it is for controlled traffic, and James will discuss that a little bit later with his part. So what options do we have with True Tracker? So we have a lot of options to us. When it comes down, we can steer an implement. So we can steer it with coulters, and that's the first one on the top left there. So if you've got an implement with no steering on it at all, so this is where this comes in. We could, or you could, or we can find somebody who has a set of steering coulters. We engage them in the ground and we physically steer them to steer the machine on the back. Some people have done it on ridges, on different pieces of thing. So we can, in some instances, the implement has no steering. As I say, we can do that. We can also do tongue steering and articulated steer, but by far the most popular in the UK and Ireland, and probably across Europe, is load-bearing wheels, where the steering is already installed on the implement. and we can overlay our system onto that, and also the side shift system, very popular in the UK. Again, we're doing systems over in Ireland now. We've done a lot of systems in Ireland, a lot of systems in the UK. Because it's a quick solution by controlling any 3-point link machine, and it's very easy, one-stop shop. So you pick it up and away you go. Again, Hervé will talk about this a little bit further. So again, we talk about the benefits. They're much the same as TrueGuide, but on a more critical scale, should we say. So it reduces the operator fee, improves efficiency for much the same reasons, really. Again, the demand on the operator is higher, but again, with the destoning and this soil uniformity across the field, it's the destoner driver who always gets it in the neck for not having enough soil to cover the potatoes. So yeah, it's quite key, I think, to get that right. Repeatable tractor and implement accuracy. So we're keeping the traffic in lanes, especially on controlled traffic. We reduce crop damage with the tractor and with the implement. So the tractor's not moving off the trafficking lanes; it's going straight down, as does the implement. It improves operator efficiency. So he doesn't need to worry about where the drill is on the back, where the destoner is, or the planter, or where the tractor's going. What he's got to worry about is the operation. Is it putting enough seed down? Is it blocked? Is it not blocked? Is my sprayer working as it should do? Etc. So he can concentrate more about the operation of the implement rather than where the implement's going. So also we improve the accuracy on difficult terrain. So if you're on bank side, obviously it works really, really well. You can see a massive improvement on bank side. But again, on the flat, it moves. It really does move. So with all this in mind, we caught up with James Peck from PX Farm, Managing Director at PX Farm, earlier in the week. So yeah, we'll go over to James now, and he'll give us a brief overview of his farming enterprise.
Everybody, James Peck from PX Farms, managing the business just outside Cambridge. Started in 2003. We're farming just shy of 12,000 acres. Currently on a combinable sugar beet and potato operation, and soon be moving back to a combinable. I came about, as many people did, in the sort of late 1990s, early 2000s, in a basic form of steering. And at that time, the platforms that we were using were John Deere related due to the type of machinery we had. During 2010, I was very lucky enough to get a Nuffield scholarship, in which I then took about going around the world, and my chosen subject became controlled traffic farming. So to do that, I needed to fully embrace an RTK network of precision steering, working on a sort of down to 1 inch basis of repeatability. So I went around the world looking at different systems of what would suit us. I was lucky enough that RTK Farming started up in the area, who were putting up base stations predominantly around Cambridge and in expanding areas. And we now also farm in Bedfordshire, Norfolk, Cambridgeshire. So we needed to have networks that we could sort of bolt onto rather than having to have our individual systems. We did start off with our own individual methods of putting up base stations, where we, when we took on farms, we put them up, but actually that is quite an expensive way of doing it. So we moved on to Trimble, and we went on the FMX boxes on the Trimble systems, on everything from the combines through to the sprayers, the tractors. Anything that goes in the field has a RTK Farming FMX box. So we, on my Nuffield, we looked at controlled traffic farming effectively, that works on a 12 meter system. So the combines are on 12 meters, the drills are 12 meters and 6 meters, and we go down to as small as 3 meters, which is the subsoilers. And then we go up to 24 meters on the rolls, and then the sprayers at 36 meters, and obviously fertilizer spreaders, etc. So it's effectively a 12 meter system. And by 2012, we'd fully embraced into Trimble, and we'd fully embraced into controlled traffic farming, which we had started in 2010. But in 2012, I took the decision to out all of the machinery which didn't fit and to repurchase, which was a big step on an unknown system which I had seen around the world, but not in the UK. So when we were doing that, we looked at implement steering as well, because effectively there was two different types. There was the type that would have moved the tractor over, which is the passive, and then that would kept you online, or you could steer the implements. Now, part of the rejig of machinery was that we bought a Sprinter 12-meter drill, which had a tracking drawbar and could be hydraulically operated to be controlled via the Trimble. So we had a separate dome put on the drill, and it independently steers itself with the wheels to keep itself online. Now we don't have that many challenging hills, but Cambridge is always regarded as a flat county, but actually we're on the high hills and slopes. So the longer your implement gets, the worse that it can come off the line, one for a better word. So with the drill, we took the decision to fit this, and we've been running it ever since. So what we've effectively done, I think, 9 seasons now with that outfit, and we've had implement steering fitted to our potato equipment, and also steerings on the sprayer and also on a fertilizer spreader. Now, I dug off early. I was very lucky that when I started working with Grimmy on potato equipment, they presented me a model at an open day that we had here on the farm. And I keep it as sort of a pride of place on the boardroom table. So I've got it to hand so I can sort of illustrate the point of this.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can see that. So what we've done is we've taken basically a power harrow, which is just a standard power harrow off the shelf for 6 meters, and we had a drawbar built to go on the rear, and then we put the planter on the back of the drawbar, and then the wheels on the planter here are controlled by Trimble steering independently, and they will move this planter to keep the beds in the right position, because obviously you've now got different points, like running an articulated lorry of swivel. So the steering for us it's really about precision and controlled traffic farming. The basis of what we're trying to achieve is measurement is one of the big issues in agriculture, in the lack of measurement available. So you cannot really decide upon the results you've got unless you can have repeatable measurement. So controlled traffic farming was the start of repeatable measurement, where the machinery is driving exactly the same place year after year after year. We're now starting to see patterns, and there was always going to be a 7-year process in this sort of conversion, where the land would change within that time. And we are now looking at land which feels as if it's a grade less. So it's improved the land. Heavy clay is sort of become, in terms of more silty based as to what its classification would be. So that's mainly due to compaction. So the less you drive on it, the less in which you compact it. Of course, the freer the soil becomes, the easier it becomes to work, etc. And the better the drainage is and the root development. So the idea was that we would be able to increase the yield by an 18% increase, purely on the basis of the same inputs we were putting on pre-2012, just because the plants had a better rooting structure and availability of nutrients, and without the compaction element would then be able to increase their output. Because one of the things that throughout my career and also my family's career is we've rather plateaued on the development of, say, wheat, for example, the 10 tonne a hectare club. Yes, you might get 11 or 12 tonne a hectare if you're lucky, but what we're not doing is we're not seeing the range of increase to 15 or 6. But people who are doing the world challenge of how many tons a hectare you can grow on your hectare, they are seeing the benefits. So it's trying to get the average of the farm up and getting the measurement. Now, the steering effectively with the implements is just another form of measurement. If you want to follow with another implement, whether it's weeding or something else, you need that planter to have gone in exactly the place that you need it to. Otherwise, your next machine, if it doesn't have the same setup of drawbar, maybe linkage mounted, is going to suddenly take the rows out. So that was one of the things we started to do, is trying to work on the precision basis, which effectively, to be crude about controlled traffic farming, it is the start of robotics. Once you've got measurement in a field and you start to got good placement, and you start to get a control of the headlands and also the field work, we are at the basis of the start of being able to introduce robotics, because we now have a controlled environment. And that's where effectively I'm working towards long term. I'm not an advocate of the small machines. I still believe for work rate, we're going to still have big machines operating in fields. And that's the model that we've been working on since I started in 2003, which was a much smaller base system of 1,600 acres.
Great. Oh, it's great. I say we call with James earlier in the week on Monday. And again, thanks for giving up your time, James, for giving us insight into your farming agribusiness and your farming enterprise. And yeah, I think I'm an ambassador for implement steering. So it's been 8 years. 8 years you've used implement steering now on your drills.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, and would you be without it now?
No, because whenever it hasn't gone right, we have actually stopped and got it working. So no.
Yeah, no, it's great. And again, the question tab is open. So if you've got any questions for James, please do put them in the questions tab. As I say, we'll speak to James a little bit later on. So now moving on to LaForge. So again, I'd like to introduce Hervé, who's General Manager of LaForge, and Hervé is going to take us through the LaForge product offering. So Hervé, over to you.
Thank you, Lee, and hello, everybody. Thank you for Trimble to have us tonight as a guest. So as LaForge, we are a French company, as you may hear from my accent, and we present ourselves as tractor implement interaction expert. And next. So our head office is in France and our main factory as well. And we also have an establishment and with a factory in the USA in Iowa. LaForge offers a range of products which enhance tractor and implement productivity and accuracy. We've been designing and manufacturing furnaces and PTOs since 1990, and we entered the rear implement guidance market 5 years ago in 2015, starting in North America and then developing solutions for Europe. So tonight we are here to talk about Dynatrack, which is a universal guidance interface. Dynatrack is the gray equipment between the tractor and the implement on the picture you see on the slide. That's the gray part. What Dynatrack does, it adjusts rear implement position based on true tracker inputs, as Lee explained earlier, to guarantee implement working accuracy by 2 centimeters, and this consistently across the field. So as you may see on the picture, we can work with any kind of tractor, same as Trimble True Tracker system, and any kind of implement. So the key benefits of Dynatrack: first, it's universal. It fits all tractors and all farm implements. So whatever the function of the implement, strip till, ridging, planting, side dressing, row crop cultivation, the Dynatrack will be able to guide it. Consequently, it's profitable as it allows you to reap precision farming benefits at each stage of the crop culture. Quite often, we have farmers coming to us because they want to guide only their row crop cultivator or their planter, and this for a specific crop. But once they have realized they have bought Dynatrack and do the setup with True Tracker, quite often people start, for instance, with onion to guide an onion planter and row crop cultivator. And 1 month later, they come back to us saying, hey, can I guide my potato equipment? And we say, of course you can. And then That's what they appreciated, is that it is simple because they only have one software configuration and interface to manage. When you think back about Lee's slide on the 5 different configurations of TrueTracker, with Dynatrack, you only have one to manage, whatever they implement. And consequently, that's much more economical, because with one Dynatrack interface, you can guide all of your farm implements, whatever the design. Of course, 3-point versions, but as well semi-carried 2-point versions and trailed implement with an option to add. So with this solution, you can move to precision farming without having to buy new implements, or having, when you buy one, to pay for an extra option to have trailed axle or this kind of feature. So that's really beneficial. And again, most people start with one crop and then they leverage the Dynatrack and TrueTracker with all of their crop and appreciate it even more and pay back faster. So what are the main applications for Dynatrack? As of today, in our customer portfolio, we can consider that we have many people focused on high value crops, vegetable producers, potatoes, sugar beets, where accuracy is really beneficial, and because you have lots of operations. We also have big farms. When we started in the US and still there, we have many customers having large corn and soybean farm in the Midwest. And finally, we've got organic customers where accuracy is critical, because when they do need row crop cultivation, and they need this to be as accuracy as possible to optimize yield and control labor costs for reading. So now we can take you through a 2-minute video explaining how the Dynatrack operates.
As a universal implement guidance interface, the Dynatrack accommodates all kinds of implements. It is simple for all operators to use at each stage of different crops. Universal, it positions all implements with high accuracy. GPS guidance lines generated during seedbed preparation or planting are used as a reference through harvest. With a GPS guidance system using a receiver on the implement and one on the tractor, Dynatrack constantly corrects the implement position to keep it on the right path. In a slope or a curve, Dynatrack adjusts its position to keep the implement in line with the tractor. Even in a flat field, an implement can drift if the soil is harder on one side or if the implement is not perfectly symmetrical. For carried implements, contrary to rigid interfaces, the float feature of the arms allows an accurate tracking of the implement behind the tractor without generating influences on the implement position from tractor corrections. Dynatrack's high-quality manufacturing warrants its reliability. Its exclusive design and functionality reduces implement wear and increases accuracy of both the tractor and implement. For all farmers looking at working accurately, Dynatrack is the efficient and profitable solution.
And after that, we may have one more video, just 15 minutes in the field, if you have this one, Lee, of a UK customer using Dynatrack and TrueTracker. Okay, so then we can switch directly to the next slide, which is what does make the Dynatrack unique? We've been through that in the video, but the key point to have in mind is that contrary to other side shift interfaces, Dynatrack is the only one which features this freeze-way capability, which you can see around the number 2 on the picture with the red arrows. So the hooks can move sideways, the arms can move sideways. That's a patented feature which allows to decouple the implement motion from the tractor when shifting. So what are the benefits? First, it avoids side load on the implements. You have no damages to the implement, nor implement getting locked in the ground when shifting when there is correction. Secondly, you'll get a much better steering response of the tractor and better handling of slope or curves than with a rigid version. Because as correction is smooth, you don't have the system which keeps bouncing from one side to the other, like we would have with a rigid system. And finally, you got a perfect implement trailing, which means tractor positioning correction do not interfere with implement positioning correction and vice versa. And for people using heavy implement, as Lee mentioned, sometimes you've got a big potato planter. This one are heavy, and when you try to do active guidance with a rigid interface, when you try moving the implement, eventually you do not move the implement. You are just pushing the tractor on the opposite side of the correction. And you have many customers very enthusiastic about this system because it has really solved some of their issues. And now they can really have tractor guidance operating at the same time as implement guidance and taking the best out of it. So now, quick one slide just to explain you what is the Dynatrack range. We have several versions of 3-point side shifts, each of them allowing to fit the different needs of customers. So the compact is for small tractors and small implements. The Premium Plus is for medium tractors and implements. And the Dynatrack Ultima is for large tractors and implement. All of these are PTO compatible, which allows to make them as universal as possible. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, ideal. Thank you very much, Hervé, for that insight into the LaForge product. And again, just a reminder that if you any questions about LaForge or the product, please do get in touch with your local Trimble dealer, and then we can perhaps set an individual meeting up with Hervé to discuss your requirements further on an individual basis. As we know, it's every farm is different, all the lands are different, so everyone's individual needs are different. So we'll be more than happy to do that and arrange that. So really opening up for Q&A now. So there has been a few questions coming in, but by all means keep going and bringing them in. Let me move that over there. So I'm looking at you guys. So let's look at the first question. And who's going to be first up? Who are we going to? Let's make that bigger. So there's lots of questions. Let's go to the top. And so, what type of correction services do you recommend for each type of guidance? So for a true guide and true tracker, what type of correction services do you recommend for guidance? Let's open that to Rod Armour in its Soil Essentials. A lot of experience in implement steering. So Rod, what correction services do you think would you recommend for implement steering?
Okay, so everything that we've done so far, Lee, we've gone straight to RTK. And from our experience, being the Rolls-Royce correction service, that's the one that I would recommend.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Is that includes so 2.5 centimeter accuracy, so RTK radio, VRS or N-trip, RTX fast, center point RTX fast, also?
Yeah, no experience of that from our side of things, but maybe Mark can answer from that perspective from Vantage England.
Yeah, I think, Mark could also give us some information on that. And I know Robert Hodgkins, he's on Centrepoint Fast with True Guide and has very successful results with that. So again, gives us a satellite-based correction. Whether Mark's had any experience of that. If Mark's on, maybe he's not. So what we got now, can you share a correction signal between two receivers? So can we share a correction signal? Who wants to answer that one? Who's going to put the hand up for that? I don't know, is Andy Bell from Sim Agri, is he on the line? Essentially, maybe it doesn't sound like it is. I'll answer that one then. So can you share the correction signal between two receivers? Yes, we can. So yeah, we can. So we get one correction signal coming in, and the 2 GPS receivers will use that correction signal. So you have GPS 1 and GPS 2, and they'll both use an RTK radio, for instance. They don't need 2 radios for each receiver. So that answers that question. So what we got? Is it enough to steer the potato planter on its wheels? My experience is that you need to steer the potato planter in the front as well. Maybe James, because James Peck could answer that one, because he's got a lot of experience with potato planters and his rig. So do you feel it needs steering at the front as well as the rear, James?
You've got two sets of dolly wheels on, but have I disappeared?
No, you're there. We can see you.
Sorry. You've got 2 sets of dolly wheels at the back, and obviously you're getting it on the line at the beginning, so all you're doing is slightly shifting it backwards and forwards in small differences, as opposed to trying to drag it across the field as what the 12-meter sprinter drill can actually almost pull itself 3 meters across.
Yeah, I don't know whether Andrew Manfield from Manterra, have you got anything to add to that? You have a bit of experience with potato planters.
Yeah, you can see, particularly if you're working across slopes, you can see this kind of sag effect in the middle, if I can describe it like that, where you're effectively steering the front point and you're steering the rear point, but obviously not controlling the middle. It doesn't often prove to be a significant issue, but I mean, there is always the possibility of adding a steering ability onto that middle drawbar or whatever facility you have, if you have that available on your machine. So yeah, it can be seen, can be an issue in particular circumstances, hopefully not too often.
Ideal. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, James, for that.
Just to comment on this, Lee, that's typically where a Dynatrack would fit, because you have it in the front, and you can really guide any kind of implement. So we can do that, and then you are doing it smoothly. Yeah.
Yeah. So with the side shift. Yeah. So so a couple of good suggestions there. Next question I'm looking at running a hoe for weeding grain maize. What would be the benefits of True Tracker over a camera guidance? Maybe Mark Griffiths from Vantage England and Wales would like to answer that one. Is Mark with us?
I am indeed. Hey guys.
Here he is. Yeah. So Mark, did you hear that?
Yeah. So it's kind of various, really. It's depending on what you want to do. The good thing about the Trimble equipment, it's very flexible across your operation. So if you've got a hoe that's using camera technology, it can be influenced a lot by exterior factors such as visibility. But with the Trimble, because it's running on the foundation of the guidance, whether that's on the center point or RTK, it's not subjected to elements like weather, visibility, and crop growth. So some see it as more of a firm foundation to build on the guidance from. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's about right. And also, I think that the benefits of True Tracker as well over camera guidance is, and it's something that Robert saw last year when he was using his hoe, the same sort of thing, weeding in between the grain, is when you get that weed cover in between the rows, the camera sometimes struggle to find the row find, so it doesn't really know which row to follow. If you get a lot of weed growth in between the rows, maybe not with grain, might not be such a big problem, but it can be if you can't get onto spray. I've seen that happen. So yeah, I think that's a big thing, is if you can't get on, it's a bit wet at the minute, but the weeds don't stop growing, and you do get a good weed coverage in between the rows, the camera can struggle to just find which row to follow. So big benefit of True Tracker is we don't need any row to find, but obviously with using True Tracker behind the maize drill's got to be again GPS driven, probably with side shift and a LaForge side assist shifts, and would work well for that.
One advantage on this one is that if you go with True Tracker and LaForge Dynatrack, you don't need to buy a new hoeing machine. You can use the one you already have. So.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's something to work on. So next question is, I'm searching for a True Tracker system with discs for mount behind the implement. is this available from LaForge? Hervé, for you. So he's looking for to mount discs behind an implement. Is that something you do?
No, the reason is the system we've designed works well to guide implement actively, and we can use passive discs if it's needed to stabilize a light implement on slopes, but we do not do active discs because our system, there are a few inconveniences with going with discs. First one is you have to set them up on each implement you use. So when you want to use True Tracker to guide to do subsequent operations, you have to move your disc from the planter, from the ridger to the planter to the row crop cultivator. Secondly, so our system allows to really move freely, whatever the implement, and you have no extra work to add. And also when you're on slopes, the issue with discs is that they can, when they try to correct, they are moving sideways and they can create a furrow in a way. And lastly, the issue with discs is if you have stones, you may damage the discs. So all of these issues are solved with Dynatrack, but we can dig into this separately, of course.
Okay, thank you, Hervé, for that. Is anybody else? Does anybody else know of who does these discs, so discs that follow behind on the call? So
Lee, we support disc steering, don't we? We support.
Yeah, we support it, but like discs is what. So what we've been asked here is from Roman is that did LaForge do they sell the disc system? So yeah, if we do find anybody, Roman, we will be in touch and try and answer that question for you. So just reading this one. One question. Concentrate on another way. Is it to bring True Tracker to PIQ software? Chris, hang on, I want to you.
I think yes, potentially it will come eventually. I think that was it, Roman, again for that one. Yes, it will probably come eventually, Roman, but not as we are today. Okay, is the answer.
So roughly, what would TrueGuide cost to put on a machine? Who would like to answer that one? Anybody? Who's shouting first? What are the cost of TrueGuide? So passive implement steering. What's the cost of TrueGuide to put on a machine? Let's, I don't know. Mark, do you want to answer that one? Give us a rough idea, because again, it's very specific to machines. So every machine will be different. But if you've got a rough idea, Mark, or just ballpark-ish?
Yeah, it depends. Like sometimes you can use some equipment that's already on farm or stuff that's there, but I'd say roughly it would be between probably 5,000 and 10,000, depending on the site, etc.
Yeah. And if you're looking at pricing, please, just get in touch with your local dealer. So yeah, just get in touch with them. Because I say everything's different. Every machine's different for what you're fitting. So. What's the UK price of Dynatrack middle-sized HP tractor? What sort of price of what pricing? I think the pricing, I speak to your local dealer. Again, it's just easier. Question for James. So with your CTF system, have you ever needed an implement to fill in the rutted tram lines?
Yes, because what we did is we had the Cultivation Solutions, as it started off, built in 2011, which was to as effectively now taken on in the form of Grange machinery. They build them, and we run one behind the Joker. Well, sorry, on the back of the Cat. Which is not dissimilar to what Harvey's looks at, apart from it hasn't got side shift, and then with the legs, and then we drag the Joker behind that, and then we have, and that's hydraulic trip force on the legs, and then we run the similar one that I actually bought off Tom Hawthorne, which actually was the second one that was built for CTF, and I now run that on another Challenger for the same principle, because the thing about the tram lines is they are in the same place every year. So you, depending on the timing of year when you go on spraying, is often what causes them to get wet. But what I would say, the thing about controlled traffic is, because it's a permanent tram line that you use year after year, actually it does become quite solid in those runs. So actually you generally get them less deep from what you would do if it was on, say, a conventional plough-based system, which has a much deeper base to go down to. But yeah, in principle, your answer is yes, we've got a device to sort it.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, James, for that. So one more question. So what is it about pricing? A bit Hervé for you, maybe. Whether you'll have the answer or not, I don't know. But what is a rough UK price of a Dynatrac for a middle-sized horsepower tractor? I guess middle.
Yeah. Yeah, this one is the we have two premiums. The premium, which is non-PTO compatible, which is around 11,000 euros. So you would have to convert, and you have some transport fees for UK market. And we've got the Dynatrac Premium Plus, which is PTO compatible and slightly above 13,000 euros. So again, you have transport and currency conversion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully that's answered the question. And again, any of these questions that you do want, we'll get in touch with you to get you a more accurate price by all means. So that is all the questions. So that's everybody's questions. So I'd like to thank James and Robert for their input in tonight's webinar. Much appreciated as always. And to Hervé for sharing the LaForge product with us, and again all the resellers from across the UK and Ireland. I think Terry's on as well, but obviously not enough questions there. But thank you to all them guys for giving all the time, and to you guys for paying attention, and hopefully you enjoyed it. There will be more to come from Straight Talking with Trimble Ag. So yeah, keep an eye on the social media sites, and yeah, we'll be in touch soon. So again, thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.